What is up? What is going on? It's a Sunday. No, it's not. It's a Monday. And we're live. I thought it was a Sunday because long weekend for some. But nonetheless, we are back on Small Ball. Thank you for joining me. This is a particular show that we've been thinking about for quite some time. Big time show today. We're going to try to keep it to half an hour, but here's what we have going on. It is our postseason preview, okay? The MLB postseason starts tomorrow. Of course, as always. And my picks this year, my predictions, have been really just not good. They've been really bad. Nevertheless, I'm confident, I am brave, and I'm going to bring you my postseason predictions, okay? Here's how it's going to work. I'm going to give you my actual predictions. Then, I'm going to give you the bracket according to strikeouts, okay? We've talked about this on numerous occasions. The team with fewer strikeouts, I think, has a significant advantage in each series. Last season, there were 9 postseason series. 8 of them were won by the team with fewer strikeouts. 8 of 9. The only exception was the World Series, which, as you all know, was won in the 7th inning of Game 7. Okay. So 8 of 9 series last year were won by the team with fewer strikeouts. Only 3 of 9 series were won by the team with more home runs. So the team with more home runs you'd think would dominate. They were 3-6. And the team with fewer strikeouts was 8-1. So analytics people, tell me what you think about that. Once I give you that, I will then bring you a third bracket. So we will start with my actual predictions, followed by the strikeout bracket, followed by my catcher's bracket. Because as we've said on this show, the team with the better defensive catcher also has a pretty substantial advantage in my view. Okay, and obviously there are other factors and some exceptions, things of that nature. You could have the better catcher but more strikeouts, so those would conflict. We will talk about that. I'll try to run through those quickly because I don't want to bore you guys with too many brackets and details and all that stuff. But without further ado, I have finally completed my bracket. And I have some things in there, and we'll get to the specifics, that do go against some things that I traditionally stand for. Some of which, the two that we just talked about. I have, on a couple occasions, picked a team with an inferior defensive catcher and a team with more strikeouts. Part of that is because of the different postseason format. I think in a 3-game series, both of those two factors, or I should say each of those two factors, and both, are not as telling in a shorter series. Over a 7-game series, much more impactful. Over a 3-game series, more room for some other stuff to go on. Not really more room, but you know what I mean. Nevertheless, let's get into it. Okay, I had a really, really, really difficult time picking these games. Okay, leading up to the end of the season, I was trying to figure out what the matchups were going to be, starting to make my preliminary picks, and I was feeling pretty good about it. But the way they ended up, the matchups, I'm gonna adjust that a little bit. I really struggled mightily to come up with picks that I was confident in. I have finally made my decisions. I'm not too confident, I gotta be honest. The National League, I'm feeling pretty good. The American League, each of the four first series, I could see myself being wrong. But I have to stick to my picks. I have to go all out and bring you my final decision. So here we go. We will start in the American League with the Toronto Blue Jays at the Tampa Bay Rays. So this is a series I really do think. I had trouble with this series. That might surprise you. I really did, and here's why. The 3-game series benefits the Rays a lot because they have 3 starting pitchers, all of which are very good. So they have a starting pitching advantage. The reason why I struggled was because their starting pitching has been a little bit underwhelming this year. They have to face Hyunjin Ryu, who's been a really, really, really strong pitcher, particularly in big spots over the last 3 years. So if they lose game 1, all of a sudden they're in a hole. They have to come back. Plus, as we've talked about, the Rays' defense, in my estimation, is the worst in Major League Baseball. They also led the regular season in strikeouts, which, as you know, is something that I probably, traditionally would hold against them. And I do hold it against them. But I have to go with the Rays here because the Rays pitchers are all heavy strikeout guys, okay? And I think that that's very important in the postseason because you're facing very elite hitters. Now, the Blue Jays bring energy, youth. They have some versatility, a little bit of depth, not too much. But the reason why I think this is a mismatch and I think the Rays are actually going to win this series is because the Blue Jays lineup, I should say the heart of the Blue Jays lineup is prone to striking out and swing and miss. And I think that they're going to struggle, especially in their first postseason, guys like Bichette, Cavan Biggio, Vlad Jr., Lourdes Gurriel Jr. I think that they're going to struggle against the high velo Rays pitching staff and bullpen. I think the series will go to 3 games. I think the Blue Jays will steal 1. I'm going Rays in 3 and advancing to the next round. Now, Yankees at the Indians. This was the series that I had the most trouble with. I think that these are the 2 best teams in the American League. I do. So many reasons why I had trouble with this. I picked the Yankees as my number 1 team coming into the season. They look a little bit different, just a little bit, than what we thought they would look like, and they have been struggling recently, okay? And the Indians, I was very high on coming into the season. They struggled early, and I looked like I was going to be wrong on them, but then they really got hot. And now they snuck into the 4 seed. Very, very top-heavy roster, especially offensively. And you guys know how I feel about their pitching staff. I think all of their pitchers are a little bit overrated because their catching situation, the tandem of Roberto Perez and Sandy León, is absolutely remarkable. So a guy like Shane Bieber, for example, I don't think that he's quite the pitcher that people have him out to be. But that doesn't mean he's not going to produce. I think he will produce. But I think a lot of that has to do with their pitching, coaching staff, and their catchers. But I'm sending the Yankees on to the next round, and here's why. And now you'll say, whoa, hold on a second. We have a complete and utter mismatch of Gary Sanchez against Roberto Perez and Sandy León. Yes, that is true, but there is a catch, no pun intended. The Yankees have announced that they're going to be going with Kyle Higashioka in Game 1 to catch Garrett Cole because Garrett Cole is more comfortable with Higashioka, okay? My feeling probably is that if the series were to go to 3 games, I think they would actually sneak Higgy in there another one of those 3 games as well. So I think we're going to be seeing more of Kyle Higashioka behind the plate than Gary Sanchez. Not that Kyle Higashioka is Johnny Bench, but it's not quite the gap that we're expecting to see. So that's the first catch. The second catch, okay, is let's look at these pitching matchups. We have Garrett Cole against Shane Bieber in game 1. Then we have Masahiro Tanaka against probably, not sure, we'll say Carlos Carrasco. And then in game 3, the Yankees have announced they're going with Jay Happ, and I would expect the Indians to go with Aaron Savale, potentially Zach Plesac, but probably Aaron Savale. Now, Shane Bieber, who I said is a little bit overrated, but is going to continue to produce and put up these numbers due to his catching situation, against Garrett Cole, who in my estimation was last year's MVP, the best player in baseball. Now, I did predict Cole would have a down year coming out of that Astros franchise. I was right about that. He didn't quite have the same year as last year. But here's why I like the Yankees pitchers better in this series. Because as I said earlier, the Indians lineup is incredibly top-heavy. And Cole, Tanaka, Jay Happ, 3 pitchers who are tremendously smart and have pitching makeups that overwhelm lineups that are not deep, that are not, difficult to navigate. Guys like Tanaka, Happ, and Cole, who has the stuff as well, he has both, are able to work around, physically work around, but also just, metaphorically work around a Lindor and a Ramirez, and then feast on the back end of the lineup. So these are experienced pitchers with postseason credentials that are going to be able, I think, to carve up the back end of that lineup and pick their spots, for lack of a better term. And I don't think the Indians lineup is deep or balanced enough to combat that pitching staff. So I think Cole will outduel Cole will outduel Shane Bieber in game 1 with Higgy behind the plate. And I think Masahiro Tanaka, who has been an absolute monster in the postseason in his career, will get the win in game 2. And I think this is going to be quick 2 games, and the Yankees are on to play the Rays. And if it were to go a third game, you would have veteran Jay Happ, who's been hot, against either Aaron Savale or Zach Plesac, neither of whom have really any experience to speak of. Not to mention, Roberto Perez hasn't been catching all the time. I think that the Indians have been mismanaged this year by Terry Francona and company. So I just think that there are a couple things matchups-wise that I like about the Yankees here. And the Yankees also, believe it or not, had fewer strikeouts than the Indians. The Indians, I believe, were around, I think they were 26th in strikeouts. And they also did not, 26 meaning 26th most. 26th fewest. Like the 26th worst contact team. That's what I meant. They have a really bad balance of home runs, strikeouts, and batting average. They don't really do any of it well. They strike out a lot, they don't hit for power, and they don't hit for contact. So I think this pitching staff is going to carve them up. I think quick and easy, 2 games, Yankees on to play the Rays. Now, I'm going to try to go through this a little quicker because it's taking quite some time. By the way, drop a like if you're enjoying this video. I appreciate that. Next, we have the Minnesota Twins hosting the Houston Astros. Okay, I have been very high on the Twins for years now. Very, very talented team, especially offensively. And the Astros, coming off the scandal, clearly not the team they once were. I'm sending the Astros on to the next round. That might disappoint a couple of you. I'm sorry about that. Here's why. First of all, the Twins struggle in the postseason. Very bad postseason team, traditionally speaking, okay? The Astros are experienced. They also get really, really hot, okay? And if they catch one of these hot streaks now, I think they could actually make some noise in the postseason. And I think they are good in big spots. I trust them in big spots. They haven't, a lot of their players have struggled this year, but I think come the postseason, they will sort of find their groove and kind of be back to what they should be, I think. Now, they lose Verlander for the year, but Zach Greinke has been a monster this year. I think he wins game 1 easily against Barrios or whoever they throw out there. Now the Twins are in an 0-1 hole. They're not very good under pressure. I think the Astros come in. I do think the Twins will take a game, but I think this is a 3-game series. I think the Astros take 2 out of 3 and advance to the next round because the Twins' bullpen has struggled this year. That is something that the Astros really feast off of is bad bullpens. They have for years now. And I think that they have the experience and the pedigree, and I think they will continue on to the next round. And then finally, we have the Oakland A's hosting the Chicago White Sox. So I didn't really like either of these teams. And when I was doing my my pre-predictions a couple days ago, I think it was like A's Astros. It was going to be like A's Astros and then Twins White Sox. So I was going to send the Twins on to the next round. I was going to send the Astros on to the next round. Now these two teams are playing each other. I don't love either of them. We've talked about this a lot. The White Sox strike out a ton. The A's do not have a postseason level pitching staff or bullpen. I mean, it's really not good. I think that we're going to send the White Sox on to the next round. I think it's a 2-game series. I actually think the A's are going to struggle mightily in this series. Here's why. First of all, no Matt Chapman. Okay, this is an excellent defense. They have looked defensively significantly worse since the departure, or I should say the injury, of Matt Chapman. They lose him for the year. Now, obviously, when you lose the best defensive player in baseball, arguably, your defense is going to look worse, but they have looked nothing like they looked with Matt Chapman. Okay? All signs point to Lucas Giolito in Game 1, Dallas Keuchel in Game 2. The A's have no match for that. Dallas Keuchel has been really, really solid this year. Giolito as well. This is an A's roster that hit 225 as a team this year, which is 27th in Major League Baseball. So when they face these good pitchers, I don't think they're going to put the ball in play enough and string together enough base runners to create enough runs to beat this White Sox team who, like we said, strikes out quite a bit. But here's the reason why I like them in this series. If they were facing a Rays, maybe a Yankees, maybe potentially a Dodgers, I'd be a little concerned about their swing and miss. But the A's do not have any overpowering pitchers, especially starting pitchers. So I think they'll strike out a little bit more than we'd like, but they also hit for power, and I think they match up very well against a very manageable staff that the A's have. So I think they have a good matchup pitching-wise, and I think the White Sox offense will also succeed against the A's arms. 2-game series. I think I think the first game the White Sox win handedly. Second game, maybe they come back and it's a little more exciting. 2 games, White Sox on to the next series. They'll play the Astros. Now the National League. Dodgers, Brewers. It was an easy pick for me. I have the Dodgers. They're much more talented. They have a lot more pedigree. They have played better recently. I think it'll go to 3 games. I can see the Brewers sneaking in a win here. The Dodgers do have a tendency to get a little bit complacent, especially early in the postseason, right? But now with the addition of Mookie Betts, I mean it's obscene, right? And this is a Dodgers lineup that I've said has been too left-handed dominant in years past. Well, the Brewers don't have any left-handed starters, so they match up well against them. I think that they will roll through Game 3 if it gets there. I can see the Brewers sneaking in a game. I have it going to 3 games, but I do think the Dodgers are the much better team here in this series. Excuse me. The 4-5 game, Padres, Cardinals. 2 very interesting teams, okay? And it's interesting because I have been down on the Padres for years now and very high on the Cardinals for years now. But I'm picking the Padres. The main reason, and it's a really, really big matchup issue for the Cardinals, it is youth, energy, and excitement against old, no energy, running out of gas Cardinals, right? We have the Padres with Tatis, and they run and they bunt, led the league in stolen bases. Jace Tingler, I think, has done an excellent job against a Cardinals team run by Mike Shildt, who's old school, but not only old school. I like old school, but he's old school in a way that's just it's not creative, right? It's very stagnant. And this is a roster that is aging, and they've looked similar for years now with Molina and Goldschmidt and Matt Carpenter, and they just don't have enough gas, I think, to beat this highly energized Padres team. I think Padres in 2. I think they roll here. They also have a lot of options in the rotation, which the Cardinals don't. And obviously, Yadi is a Hall of Fame level defensive catcher. He hasn't caught he's only caught 40 games this year. I don't know if they're going to go with him in all 3. If it goes to 3, I would hope so, but I don't know. And even if they do, he's just, I think, running out of gas. He doesn't look the same as he used to. And I think that that's taken its toll on the Cardinals pitching staff, which has struggled this year. So I have the Padres rolling through the series, 2 games, and on to the Dodgers. Marlins, Cubs. Very tough pick for me. Now, the Marlins have never lost a playoff series, believe it or not. They have made the playoffs twice. They won the World Series both times, which is kind of a neat little stat. Does that matter? Absolutely not. It has nothing to do with who is going to win this series. It's just a fun little tidbit. Maybe it means something. I don't know. But here's a Cubs team that has done better than I thought. I have to give them credit. Yu Darvish has had a complete bounce back year, obviously. Very deep lineup, very balanced. And I think it works well in a 3-game series with no rest, because we talked about this a couple days ago. They have versatility. They have depth. They have experience and youth. They have a good balance of energy and veteran leadership. Unfortunately, I actually have the Marlins advancing. I cannot believe I'm saying that. For the whole year, up until about 2 days remaining in the regular season, I didn't think the Marlins were going to make the playoffs. Now they're here. Here's why I have them advancing. This is a Marlins rotation. I mean, there's a matchup problem here for the Cubs that just strikes people out. They have, between Sandy Alcantara, unfortunately, they probably lost Jose Urena for the year. His x-rays haven't come back yet, but that did not look good. A comebacker off the forearm. I would guess it's broken. But this rotation just such good stuff, dominant stuff, and the Cubs second in the league in strikeouts. There's a matchup problem there for the Cubs. The Marlins also have been playing really good defense, and Don Mattingly has had his best season as a manager by far, in my opinion, this year. They look like a playoff team. They really do look like a playoff team, especially in this final stretch. I watched them against the Cardinals a couple days ago, earlier in the week, against the Yankees later in the week. They look like a playoff team. And the Cubs are a good team. I just think there's a matchup problem with this high velo, great stuff pitching staff, Alcantara, Urena, against Sixto Sanchez, right? It's 98, 99, 100. And the Cubs, I think, struggle with that. Now, Chris Bryant's banged up. Not sure if he's going to play. And I think that this Marlins team is going to be on a high. They're going to be hot. They're going to be, playing with everything they have. And I think they're going to take it. I think upset alert. I have the Marlins advancing in 3 games over the Cubs. And then finally, Braves, Reds. very high on the Reds coming into the season. I don't love them as much now as I did a couple of months ago. Their defense has mightily struggled this year. I don't think they're well coached at all. We talked about this. I think David Bell is not the right man for the job. They haven't figured out who their catcher is, really. Looks like they're going to go with Kurt Casale, in the postseason. And Bowers had a really strong year, but last year he struggled. I mean, people forget last year he was, in the mid-fives. And in the postseason, he's been very up and down. So I have the Braves advancing. They're so talented, virtually no holes. And this is a Reds team that I think is just going to be a little bit overmatched. I think that offensively, the Braves are just too much to handle for this Reds bullpen, which has absolutely struggled. I mean, struggled is a complete understatement. The Braves are another team that feast on bad bullpens. So I have the Braves advancing probably in 2 games, I would say. Now, the fun stuff. Yankees, Rays. Another tough pick for me. But here is where I think the Rays defense is going to burn them. I think the Yankees, who have struck out, their contact numbers, and a lot of this is due to some of the injuries that they've had, their contact numbers are so much better than they have been in years past. 22nd in strikeouts this year, so very, very big improvement from last year when they looked like it was pretty much home run or bust. Now they're a team that can make some things happen, put some runners on, get some, a string of knocks. And this is a Rays defense that it hasn't come back to burn them in the regular season. I think in the 3-game series against the Blue Jays, they'll be fine. But now against this high-powered offense who this year is putting some hits together. If you make an error or you fail to make a play or 2 and you put some runners on and then the middle of the lineup does its thing, I think that's going to be the backbreaker for the Rays. Now, the Rays obviously handled the Yankees this year. The Yankees were very banged up. Possibly could see them, not take them lightly, obviously, right? It's a division series, but maybe not, 100% passion and oomph behind their play. I don't know. Maybe not. I think that the Rays are going to struggle defensively, like I said. And I just don't think this lineup is consistent enough against, and we've said this, a very experienced Yankees pitching staff. Right? If we're talking about the Braves or the Dodgers potentially, I think these are pitchers for the Yankees that, we forget, right? A lot of times we forget to zoom out. Once the playoffs start, we usually have opinions of these teams based on what we've seen last couple of weeks. If we zoom out and look at each roster, this is the best and most talented roster in baseball. So I just think that the Rays are looking right now a lot better than they are really, and I think the Yankees have struggled recently. I think have been a little bit complacent and not going 100% leading up to the playoffs, getting ready for these matchups. I have the Yankees advancing. I just think they're more talented, and I think the Rays defense is going to struggle. And then we have the 6-seed Astros against the 7-seed White Sox. Very interesting series, but this to me is a complete mismatch of multiple World Series winners and pennant winners for the Astros against the young, apologize for the noise outside, against the young, inexperienced, swing and miss, defense is shaky White Sox team. I think the Astros kind of handle them in a 5-game series. You got Greinke going twice probably. I think that he wins both of those games if it even comes to that, and I think the Astros advance. National League, Padres-Dodgers. If that ends up being the matchup, Really, really interesting series. I wasn't sure about this. I wavered, but I'm going to go with the Dodgers here. Okay, Jace Tingler, first season as a manager. Not sure if he's quite ready to win multiple playoff series against two very well-run organizations, Cardinals and Dodgers, and very talented rosters. Keep in mind, one of the big knocks that I have on the Dodgers as far as postseason play is this clutch factor that they seem to not have, especially on the pitching side. Clayton Kershaw, Kenley Jansen, Walker Buehler even hasn't quite been what I would hope him to. I would hope that he should be. But there's no fans. So maybe that helps them a little bit in that department. And I think that this pitching staff gets it done against the Padres. And also another very right-handed heavy pitching staff for the Padres, extremely right-handed, against a Dodgers lineup of primarily left-handed hitters. So I think it's a good matchup for Los Angeles. I think they advance. And then finally, our final division series matchup, we have the Braves against the Marlins. I thought about this. I gave this some legitimate thought, but the Braves are just significantly more talented. The Marlins bullpen is not great. It's okay. It's been better than people, expected. But I think this Braves team is too talented for the Marlins to really keep up. And I think that the Braves will kind of dominate this series. Their pitching staff has been banged up. It's been a little bit, shaky recently. But I just think the Marlins will be in over their heads, having, none of these guys really with any playoff experience. And the Braves, I think, are, they've been getting better and better and better and better and itching to advance in the postseason. I think this year they head to the championship series. Yankees against the Astros, a rematch of last year's championship series. The difference is Garrett Cole obviously now is in New York as opposed to Houston. So this is a Houston pitching staff, Zach Greinke, and that's it, against Cole, Tanaka, who I see, honestly, Tanaka as an elite pitcher in the postseason. I mean, I've said this many, 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 many times. Pitchers especially, hitters too, but pitchers especially, honestly, they might as well have two different names when we're analyzing a regular season pitcher and a postseason pitcher. Because traditionally speaking, pitchers, however they are in the regular season, good, bad, average, it doesn't usually correlate that closely to how they are in the postseason. It's completely different, and Tanaka's been good in the regular season and dominant in the postseason. I think the Yankees are too talented. The Astros have no energy this year, and I think the Yankees, after beating the Indians and the Rays, this series is going to seem like a walk in the park for them. I think it maybe goes 5, and the Yankees win the American League pennant and head to the World Series. In the National League, I have the Los Angeles Dodgers advancing. It might surprise some of you. I've been very down on the Dodgers for years now and very high on the Braves. But Mookie Betts is that valuable. I mean, without Betts, I think the Braves definitely win this series, but he has transformed this team in ways I can't even really describe. And again, the Braves have struggled in the postseason. They still are pretty young. Their bullpen is not great. And again, these Dodgers pitchers who have struggled in big moments, there's no fans this year. It's going to be in a bubble. I think that helps them. It's still postseason play, but I think they aren't quite under the pressure that they would be, had there been fans. And I think that'll make a difference for sure. I have the Dodgers. Now with Mookie Betts, I think they're more talented. I have the Dodgers advancing to the World Series to play the Yankees in the matchup that at the beginning of the season, realistically, a lot of us had in our predictions. With no fans, obviously it takes a lot of the excitement out of a Yankees-Dodgers World Series, which would be insane. Nevertheless, I think it'll be an amazing series. The Dodgers still don't quite have that X factor, that clutch factor, that postseason mojo. Now, think about this. In a bubble, in Arlington, it's a dome, no fans. I think that intangibles and the ability to create energy is going to be so much more exponentially important this year, okay? Because, last year, these are two teams, Astros, Nationals. Every game was won by the road team. Now, that sounds ridiculous, and it is. But these are two teams that just create energy. Now there are no fans in a bubble. I think whichever team can create more energy, more noise, more adrenaline coming from within the organization and the dugout and the players, I think has a significant advantage. And the Dodgers in the postseason, we know have struggled. I don't think this is the year that they finally get over the hump. I think the Yankees are more talented on the pitching side. I think the Dodgers have a better lineup in defense. No, I shouldn't say defense. I think their defenses are pretty comparable. I think the Dodgers have a better lineup. But we forget how good this Yankee bullpen is, and Kenley Jansen has been very good. But other than him, it's a very young Dodgers bullpen and pitching staff, as a whole. And Jansen obviously hasn't been locked down, especially in the postseason in years past. I think this is finally the year that a guy like Aaron Judge really shines in the big spots. And I think this is going to come down to energy. I think the Yankees are going to create more energy, more excitement. And I do think they also have a little bit more overall talent. And a 7-game series, in 8 days, the bullpens are going to have to be deep. The Yankees is, and the Dodgers is not. So I think the Yankees have an advantage here, and I think the Yankees are your 2020 champions. It sounds weird for me to say that because when I dove into this and started to make my picks, I thought for sure I was going to have them losing at some point between the Indians and the Rays and the Dodgers and whoever. But when we zoom out, this is the best roster. And I think this year that's going to put them over the top. So there you have it. My predictions. Honestly, I think their toughest series will be Cleveland. I love Cleveland's roster. I think they're a little bit poorly coached this year, but traditionally Terry Francona is an excellent coach-manager. They got Roberto Perez and Sandy Leon. I can't stress enough how valuable that is. So it sounds crazy to me that I would pick a tandem of Gary Sanchez and Kyle Higashioka over Roberto Perez and Sandy Leon. We will talk about our catchers bracket, and I will talk a little bit in that bracket about why I think it's a complete and utter mismatch. But there are some exceptions. So I'm not going to do that today because we ran long. So I'm going to save those two brackets for if we do a show tomorrow, which I think we will, because the last game tomorrow is at 7, so we could even do it after the last game. Not sure. We'll see. But I wanted to get this in, obviously, before the playoffs started so that, obviously, once it starts and the games are being played, that changes everything. And the catchers and strikeout brackets I can do once the games start because that doesn't affect them, really, right? So we're good for today. Thanks so much for watching. I have the Yankees winning the 2020 World Series. I think their toughest matchup will be Cleveland, and I think if Cleveland wins that series, which I think they certainly can, they could even be my World Series pick, my favorite. I actually, believe it or not, I'm gonna throw this in here before we go our separate ways for this evening. The Phillies, who just barely missed that last playoff spot, I think it was about a week ago, I actually had them winning the World Series. I think if they snuck into a playoff spot, I'll talk about more. I'll talk about this in more detail later, but I think they actually could have won the World Series. I really do. So a little bit of a cliffhanger there. I'll talk more in depth about that another time. Lastly, this is pretty self-explanatory, but I think it's just kind of weird and strange, odd. I don't even know the word to describe it. That the San Francisco Giants are packing their bags and going home, tied for that 8th seed. I mean, to not play a play-in game with today an off day, like what are we doing, guys? What are we doing? If I'm the Giants right now, an absolutely incredible season, as far as exceeding expectations, tying for an 8th seed, that playoff spot, and they're on their way home because of a tie break, and they didn't even play head-to-head, so that's odd to me, but what are we going to do? That'll do it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Like, subscribe, comment, all that. Would really appreciate it. Appreciate the support recently by all of you guys. A lot of fun these last couple of shows, and excited for an awesome postseason. Obviously, this, I don't think we need to quite say this, but we will have a ton of postseason coverage here on Small Ball. So thank you for tuning in. Have a healthy, happy, and safe rest of your Sunday. I think this might be the first Sunday or weekend in general show in Small Ball history. I think we might have done one, so it might be the second, but not a lot of weekend shows. But in the postseason, you'll probably see a couple more. And we should be back at it tomorrow. I think certainly, a recap of day one of the postseason, seems pretty adequate. So I think we'll be back at it tomorrow. I'll let you guys know on Instagram. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great rest of your Sunday. See you later on Small Ball. Have a good one. Peace.